Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the California Small Farm Conference. My name is Evan Wigg. I'm with Community Alliance of Family Farmers. And if you are looking for cultivating equity, integrating social justice into your land stewardship practice, you are in the right place. We are really excited about this workshop. We've got some wonderful presenters to lead us in the next workshop. So big thanks to you all for joining us, and all of you who are watching at home. I'd also encourage everyone to use the chat feature. Introduce yourself. Down below, you'll see a little button that says chat. So feel free to use that to introduce yourself. Tell us where you're coming from. If you have any questions for today's panelists, or you'd like to share any thoughts, comments, or resources related to the conversation, we'd love to have you interact. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this workshop. And thanks once again to our wonderful panelists. And I will pass it along to you all. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Evan. Right. Hello, everyone. Can everyone see my screen? Minka, can I just get a thumbs up?
Absolutely. I also see that we have Janelle and Victoria here. I just wanted to point that if we could, Evan, if you could support us in just sending them a message with the link so they can be panelists. I know we had some little confusion at the beginning. That'll be great.
Thank you, Minka. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday, the last week of Black History Month, Black Futures Month. Hello, Miss Janelle. Hello, Miss Victoria.
Hi.
Hello. Before we get started, yes, I was hoping if we could all just put our names in the chat, as well as where we are coming from today. I'm gonna see if I can. Hello, hello. Hello, Jamie. Awesome. So just like Evan mentioned, today we'll be talking about cultivating equity and integrating social justice into our land stewardship practice. We'll do this today by discussing the history of inequity in land stewardship. We'll talk about current and past movement work. We'll talk through some practical strategies for movement and community building. And we'll introduce some of the organizations that our work has supported and really blossomed into its own. And we'll tell you who we are before we begin.
Hi, everyone. I am currently just navigating through some seasonal allergies right now, so please bear with me. I'm really excited to be here with you. I am currently based in Fresno. I am a multidisciplinary being from Los Angeles, California. I call myself a Cali girl because I've lived all across the state. I work with the California Farmer Justice Collaborative as their coordinator, as well as project manager for the Butterfly Movement, and doing project admin for Be Healthy, Be Holistic consultation. As you can read on this slide as well, there are many other things that go into who I am. I'm excited to be here today to just share how cultivating equity as a term and as a practice has supported me in my work with land and people who work with land. Thank you, and I'll pass it to you, Allie.
Great. So my name is Allie. I use she and they pronouns. I come to this work from public health. I do doula work, organizing work, and have done a fair amount of farming work, and from the unceded territory of the Tonga people in Southern California. I'm the granddaughter of Jamaican immigrants, Douglas and Vera Anderson, and I just want to call in my ancestors who are no longer with me, but really ground me in the work that I do. I have a degree in public health. I do environmental work and consulting work. I'm also a proud, very, very proud board member of ACT and Non-Verba Youth Urban Farm here on Ohlone land in Oakland, California, as well as Sister Song Women of Color Justice Collective, which is a reproductive justice collective located anchored in the South. And I'm the founder and co-executive director of Feed Black Futures, We're also joined today by two community members, Janelle Harris and Victoria Deal, who will talk about their work toward the end of our session here. But just wanted to name that our folks, our people, our community, Minka and I both couldn't do this without all the people that, all the mycelium that make up our networks. So I just want to ground us first in some history, and I share the image of the Sankofa bird. Go back and get it. Also, that's how I think of Sankofa, what it translates to, because we must really learn from the wisdom of our past in order to build our future. As we know, racist economic, political, and social policies have made it very challenging for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color to steward land. So it's important that we talk through our history some. So this is a very brief timeline of land dispossession. I encourage you to just take a screenshot, Google things that might not be there. Also feel free to add in the chat things that like other highlights or really lowlights that help really depict a history of land dispossession on Turtle Island, also known as the United States. If I could ask in the chat, if anyone has seen this image before, what is it? What do you think it is? Manifest Destiny. Thank you, Hester. Yes, this is an image of Manifest Destiny, which was a phrase coined in 1845, which depicts the idea that the United States is destined by God to spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American continent. And we can trace much of this back to Pope Nicholas V, who granted the Portuguese a monopoly on trade with Africa and authorizing the enslavement of African people. I won't go through all of these points. This is a whole semester, if not longer, course in land dispossession, but I just wanted to draw our attention to a point 1830 where Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, beginning the forced relocation of thousands of Indigenous people and what we now call the Trail of Tears, as well as the reversal of 40 acres and a mule in the 1870s at the end of the Civil War, where Black Americans were promised reparations and 40 acres and a mule, and that was overturned by Andrew Johnson. And these historical points, along with many, many others, have led to Black land and therefore wealth loss and wealth accumulation. This map shows us where Black farmers have lost land and therefore wealth, and where wealth and farmland value has decreased. And you can see, can you see the pointer here? Yes, okay. So you can see where Black farmland, Black owned farmland in 1920 has accumulated, and Black held value in green. And then everywhere else, red and orange and yellow, there has been a decline in Black farmland and ownership. So if Black farmers had retained ownership of their land, they would have accumulated over $120 billion, and the sum of Black-owned farmland in 1920 would have been valued today at $185 billion. So if you're interested in this map and looking at it in greater detail, I'll put it in the chat to everyone because it's a really excellent tool developed by a scholar named Melissa Gordon out of Tufts University. And here we have another image showing acres of land that were originally Black owned in the 1920s at about 925,000. And currently today, which number is even lower, at about 35,000. So now we'll be discussing some movements that have worked to really counteract this decline. And I'll pass it over to you, Minka.
Thank you for that, Allie. I hope that folks definitely do take some time to, if you're interested, going back and looking deeper into some of these, some of the historical context, just to give clarity on, I saw what you said in the chat, Jamie. You were saying, if it hurts that we've been trained to recognize manifest destiny. which is part of our socialization, which is part of the educational system. If you've been trained in, the educational system here in the United States and even beyond, looking at the legacies of colonialism and white supremacy and how the stories of the victor are taught in our, like, to our children, to how we then implement it in the way that we organized and the way that we organize. And so this next piece allows us to really see, like, what does it mean to build movements? Many things can be considered movements, but what we're specifically talking about is movements in opposition of the quote unquote powers that be, and movements towards our collective unification, empowerment, and upliftment of our communities. So when I speak of our communities, I'm speaking on specifically Black, melanated, Indigenous folks, other people of color, as you're mentioning, Allie. And so if we could move to the next slide, we have this very powerful image of, folks gathering to join the caravan, join the march to Washington to support farmers, to support Black farmers. Now, this was a particularly important, moment in history, just kind of chronicling like the 1933 to the present, of this momentum against some of the very racist practices that were being carried out through the USDA. This piece here just gives me chills, because part of the crux of this, like, there's an example of a Mississippi farmer named Lloyd Schaefer who went to the USDA office to apply for programs to which he was entitled, right? And after 3 separate occasions, a white FHA loan officer took his application out of his hand and threw it into the wastebasket. There are instances that are very similar to Lloyd's that are very explicit, and there's some cases that are more implicit, where, when we look at this, how its current context of many farmers, even today and now, dealing with the USDA, dealing with the CDFA, have similar stressors and conversations where they're consistently being iced out of these programs that are supposed to be available for them to, to support themselves and their families and the broader food systems of our state and of our country. This was a movement that was against some of the very predatory and just vile practices where, they were being denied different allotments for funding. And the list kind of goes on and on when we look into how these were legal practices that, certain like white FHA officers and like staffed members of USDA were operating through without any fear of retaliation, and so it was something that was that we put into our hands to demand justice for ourselves. And if we can move to the next slide, I want to read this quote from our beloved Miss Fannie Lou Hamer. "Where we are, food is used as a political weapon. But if you have a pig in your backyard, if you have some vegetables in your garden, you can feed yourself and your family, and nobody can push you around." This is such an important quote, because it is part of this concept of self-determination. I'm not sure if folks know the principles of Kwanzaa, but on the second day, Kujichagulia means self-determination. It means this ability for us to first step into ourselves and know what it is that we need, be affirmed in what it is that we need, that our families need, that our communities need, and to then take tangible steps toward ensuring that we have those materials, those resources, those assurances by any means necessary. If you want to move to the next slide. Again, here we have Fannie Lou on the left. If folks are not familiar, she founded the Freedom Farm Cooperative on 40 acres of land in Mississippi to essentially empower Black farmers and sharecroppers who were suffering at the hands of white landowners. And so essentially just saying, like, we need to support ourselves. This co-op consisted of 1,500 families who were planting these cash crops, and then they were able to even purchase other acres of land to start a pig bank, supporting other Black farmers and families through the distribution of livestock. These are just some of the amazing methods that folks have been using to ensure that it's not like, okay, well, we can go and we can ask and we can beg and we can, go and knock at those doors in the USDA, wherever. And also we're gonna make sure that we get some stuff done, and the couple on the right is Shirley and Charles Sherrod, another good example. They built the new communities in 1969, a collective owned by Black farmers in Georgia. And it really just, again, takes back that power from the dispossession. These are not just legacies that live in, certain acts that we can list as we did before. It also couches the theory in the reality that these are like people and places, and they have feelings and connections. So allowing ourselves to be rooted in that as well. So moving on to the next slide. Here we just see a little smattering, a little handful of some organizations and some people who are here today in this panel, and some who may be here in this session, or who are maybe in another session. But again, people are on the ground right now doing this work, and we are continuing to do it. And so wanting to just really kind of allow ourselves to expand our mindsets, to be able to seek out these organizations, to support them, to utilize our different positions of power and privilege, and those many intersections, to get connected, to seek out some of the solutions that are being practiced right now and today. And so I will, with that, pass it to you, Allie.
Thank you. We are going to segue into a Jamboard activity to really think through additional areas and practices of discrimination in farming that are happening in your area, as well as organizations, movements, community groups that are addressing these points of discrimination. So what I'm going to do is share a Jamboard link in the chat, and I'm hoping that it works for everyone. If I could have just a thumbs up if you can see this Jamboard. Yep, I see people entering it. Bless. Great. Thumbs. Cool. So we're going to take about 5 minutes on your own, and you'll see on the left, and if you haven't used Jamboard, you're click in the area in the stickies where it says click here to type. Just double click and you can type. So where have you seen discrimination and food and farming practices in your area? And then what is an organization, community group, movement happening in your area to address that? So feel free to add additional stickies, additional text box, but we'll take about 4 minutes, 5 minutes to do this, and then we will debrief. And if you have any questions about this activity, or if you're driving, please don't do this activity. But if there's stuff that you want to see on here, feel free to just type it in the chat and we will add to this Jamboard.
Allie, if you could change the settings to make it so that everyone can edit. I think it's just in view mode for folks right now.
It's just in view mode. Thank you. Anyone with the link? Yes. Anyone with the link can edit. Appreciate it. Okay. Updated. Okay, thank you for that. Should have thought to play music right now.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like,
I'm awful at typing music through Zoom. That is not my specialty.
I know. Every time I try something different and
Something
new.
different happened.
Yeah. So I'm like, well. Ooh, we're seeing some really good um, areas of focus being shared on here so far.
Oh, yes. Great. You can. So we see, especially on the discrimination side, Latino farmers not getting into certain competitive markets in Southern California. I think this is probably discrimination within farmers markets, like people getting access to be able to sell at farmers markets. Yeah, the farmers markets, who they let in, who they promote, government grant making, land access issues, access to tools and resources, lack of resources for beginning farmers. Yes. You see structural barriers to growing organically because of higher cost of seed and fertilizer. And it looks like we have a lot of resources, maybe even more, on the organizations and community groups happening in your community to address this. We have ALBA, which does farmer training, California Farm Link, that supports people in getting access to land and resources, California Food and Farming Network +1, community gardens and urban ag assistance, La Milpa in Fresno, giving farm workers access to land, to tend land, to steward land, to agroecology commons, bless an organization here in the Bay, the East Bay, that does farmer resources support and sharing. Desert Healthcare, UCCE should do more outreach with Latino farmers. Oh, the lines, thinking about drawing the lines between those. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. So we'll wrap up here. And thank you for indicating where you've seen discrimination in food and farming, as well as organizations, movements, community groups that are happening to address this. We can see there are a lot of issues, but it looks like there are a lot of resources, and maybe, and at the end, we'll do some resource sharing so we can support one another in accessing these resources. Oh, percent. Is there a red line on the screen? How did that happen? Just gonna have to let it stay there. I'm unsure how I did that.
Oh, okay.
I'm wondering if I could edit it.
I don't know. I feel like it was on the other
It was
page.
on the Jamboard. Yeah.
It just seems like maybe it's
And
on
now it's
on
and
your
now it's
screen.
on the Canva. Yeah, and now it's on my screen. All right. I'm sorry to that person's face. How bizarre. Okay. I figured something would go off. If this is the only thing that goes awry, I'll take it.
Yes, well, thank you all for sharing your thoughts and your ideas and kind of just like we were saying, I like that we chose those two questions just so that we could have an idea of like um oh yeah, Hester said maybe you're writing it in Zoom. And there's that little like annotate button in the corner, maybe if there's an eraser in there. Anyhow, will we take a look at like what are some of the issues that need to be addressed? Yay, Hester, thanks for that. And then what are some of the entities that we see addressing those issues? And so I think that it's an important balance to have a both and of like, we know that there's something wrong. How do we be in solution and not have to feel like we have to like rebuild, what is it? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the phrase. Rebuild the wheel. Um, y'all know the phrase I'm talking about, but essentially just doing over what may already be being done by someone close to us. And a lot of that happens when we reach out, when we have sessions. There we go. Thanks. Recreate the wheel. We reach out to our networks. In my work, we often call it ecosystem mapping, where we are able to kind of like get a broader look at who is in our network. And so I love this picture of us, the folks, some of the folks of CFJC, California Farmer Justice Collaborative. I give thanks for Paul. Paul, you see him here in the picture. He's one of the OGs of CFJC. Also, Ali is a member of CFJC, as well as Jamie, and many other folks. I'm grateful for the work that this organization has done. Folks came together to essentially as the title of our workshop, cultivating equity, like what does equity look like on a statewide and a federal level from a policy framework. And so if you're not familiar with AB 1348, which is the Farmer Equity Act, which was the momentum used to solidify the phrasing for the socially disadvantaged farmer and rancher, to have it define Black, Indigenous, and people of color as the folks who need to be included in that definition. And so we know that language is very much an intentional way that people are written in and written out of policy, of laws, of many different ways that we operate and operationalize our work. And so just giving thanks for being a part of this group that is still active and doing we're up to some really cool things. So this is a plug for CFJC as well. If you want to learn more, get involved, I will of course have my contact information for how that can look. If we move to the next slide, this is Sankofa Gardens. This is a project that we began. Brandy Mack is the founder of this organization, and it is a project of the butterfly movement, which the impetus for this project came in 2020. At the height of the pandemic, as a mutual aid project to essentially kind of assuage some of the many calls for action. As Janelle put in the chat, East Oakland has no access to fresh food. Like, that's not just a phrase that's just coming out of nowhere. It's coming from lived experience. And the fact is that there are a lot of organizations and initiatives that do a lot of discussion around, like, what can we do and what can we do? And so sometimes you just have to go and do the thing, and you have to put like faith and trust in the hands of the people who are from there and who live there. And so these pictures are of some of our family members who we went and built backyard gardens for in East Oakland. And so if we want to move to the next slide, this is just a little bit of synopsis from what I just shared on these two entities, and just how they embody this practice of movement building and the importance of historical context. And then, like we were saying, what do we do next after we know what is needed? What do we do next after we've learned where people have been struggling? What do we do next? How do we take that into our hands, um, and into our neighborhoods and into our families? Um, so yeah, I want to pass it then to you, Allie.
Sure. So to answer your question, what do we do next? Some of us start organizations, which along with Minka, founding organizations to combat food apartheid in areas where our community members come from, which, is a decision that I also made during the pandemic. And that led me to steward this beautiful organization called Feed Black Futures. And we are the only Black queer women-led organization in California investing in Black farmers and getting prison-impacted Black mamas and caregivers access to nourishing food and supporting them in growing their own. So we think that with access to land and training and community, Black people can access the opportunities that have been denied to us for a very long time. And as we saw, we know why these opportunities have been denied to us for so long. And those are very systemic and intentional forces. So this is our solution, building an ecosystem of food sovereignty within Black system impacted, meaning Black folks who have been touched by incarceration, and supporting Black farmers in the process. So we do this by feeding Black mamas impacted by incarceration from BIPOC farmers and giving them the resources, the tools, and the advocacy pathways to steward land. So one of our community members is here today who has utilized some of the supports we've offered to create her own organization. So at Feed Black Futures, we support people in starting their own food sovereignty journeys. And I wanted to pass it over to Miss Victoria, who is going to tell us a little bit today about Seed to Skillet. You can see our Seed to Skillet folks here down on the bottom left with Miss Victoria right here, as well as the garden we supported her in building at her church. And Miss Victoria, I will turn it over to you for a few minutes. Why did you start Seed to Skillet?
It's a long story. I came up in foster care and I went through the judicial system and prison, and then I started having health issues where I had to change my diet. And not only that, I had a daughter that was also out in the life, and she got into some trouble, and I had to start an organization called Grandparents Gentle Hugs because there was no support for grandparents in Sacramento. And then in Del Paso Heights, there's a big community we're not able to get fresh foods. There's really not any grocery stores. The eggplant is like $5 a piece. There's a lot of childhood obesity, high blood pressure, and other diseases that are prominent in our culture. And I felt it was important to teach our youth to grow and seed their own foods because it's a need and it's a necessity and a life skill. So I started Seed to Skillet Youth Gardening Program. And from there, I've taught students plant identification, seeding, mulching, just everything, like pairing plants together and teamwork and volunteering. My students have assisted Feed Black Futures with a couple of community gardens, one of their own. And now I'm ready to move on to the next phase because they're ready to be student farmers and teach other children to do the same thing. And it's just a big need. And I feel that one seed can feed a family and 20 seeds can feed a community. And then in our culture, our food is our love language. And I just want to love on my culture. And thank you.
I love that. Miss
Thank
Victoria, can you remind us where you work and reiterate again your priority population that you work with?
Sacramento, California is north. It's Del Paso Heights, North Sacramento, but it's East Del Paso Heights. And so there's 12 blocks by 12 blocks of radius of a community of families that don't have any activities or food access and things. And so I was able to start the garden on the church in that area. And it's Del Paso Heights, 95838, Sacramento.
Beautiful. And what resources, when you think of like resources you might need to further your land stewardship journey and support?
I need so many resources, donations, supplies, funds. I need administrative help. There's just so much equipment. Continue building, and I also need to, if you can see the second picture on the right on the top, there's land right next to those garden boxes. To be able to purchase that to farm there would be amazing. And it would do the community so much good, you know. I could feed the community and more.
Wonderful. Yes, you see here, this is Miss Victoria's community and just a small fraction of the kids that she works with. And I'll pass it over to Minka and Miss Janelle to talk about their work.
Yes.
Thank you.
For that. And I just wanted to thank you, Miss Victoria, for sharing. And I love the pathway that you went through, working with Feed Black Futures and starting Seed to Skillet. And I want to just introduce Miss Janelle Harris, one of our first Sankofa Garden family members, and to just share a little bit about your experience being part of Sankofa. And just some of how it has been, supporting your family, your community, and what are some next steps that you would like to take on your journey forward?
Thank you, Minka. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you for having me. My name is Janelle Harris, and I am a family member, community member, who started bringing my son and my family to Sankofa Gardens. We just happened to pass by one day and see people farming. And I absolutely love farming. We live in an urban setting where we're surrounded by concrete, and oftentimes we have to go way far out camping to kind of get it. But we never had the opportunity to grow our own food. There's been a long line of sickness in my family due to what we put in our bodies. And I don't think that I was really conscious of what I ate until I was able to really afford or have access to, not afford, but have access to fresh food. I don't think I ate fresh vegetables until I was well into my 20s, which, I thought canned vegetables were healthy, and just not knowing we couldn't afford the fresh food. I love Sankofa because Sankofa makes me feel that I can do anything. When I first came to this group, I didn't think I had a green thumb. I always wanted to, but I never had the space or the help or the direction to do anything, to grow anything. And so I had an idea one day that I would rip my whole lawn out and have a garden in the front of my house in East Oakland. And Sankofa helped me make that a reality. There were some volunteers that came to my house and helped me design a garden, and it just took off from there. And I absolutely love that space. Sankofa donates starter plants to me so I can help grow things in my garden that I share with my neighbors. And I do. And I grow everything in my garden: cabbage, pumpkins, greens, tomatoes. And it's in the front of my house. So people cannot believe that I have this garden in front of my house where they can come and have access to all of these things. Without Sankofa, this wouldn't have happened for me. And I think it's unfortunate because we need this. Like, I have to go far to go to a grocery store. And if you compare the grocery store items to the food that I grow, it's crazy different. Like, I just harvested my celery and it's crazy different, right? My husband has to peel the skin off the apples that we buy from the grocery store because they have chemicals and wax on them. And I don't have the space to grow apples or fruit for that much. There are a lot of agencies, especially in Oakland, that say, you know, they help people do this and help people do that, but they don't. And, you know, they say that, you know, if you live on a certain block, I live in one of the most highest risk areas, and I'm not eligible to get a fruit tree, which doesn't make any sense. But, you know, Sankofa has always lent a hand out to me. They, you know, allow me to come and help farm the land that they have or that they help cultivate. And it led me to my own garden. And I want to help spread that kind of access. And we don't have it. As Black people, we don't have it.
Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Janelle. I definitely just want to say with that part of our intention being here as well is to, you know, put some more action behind some of the intention that many folks often share, and wanting to allow for us to like express that plainly. I think, you know, we did mention like this is the last week of Black History Month or last week of Black Futures Month. No, Black history is every day. Like Black people, Indigenous people, people of color have built the bones of this nation that actively moves forward with the exploitation of our bodies, minds, and spirits. And so working with the land is our not just our refuge, but our necessity to ensure that we have a future, that we keep keep hope alive, keep practice alive with what our ancestors gave us. Janelle, that really hit me when you said that you didn't think you had a green thumb before, but if y'all seen Miss Janelle's garden, she has one of the greenest thumbs I ever seen. Like,
Lisa, can I just add one thing?
yes, please.
I think it's important for us to know too is that the reason why Black farmers are so important for me is because we're never allowed to speak for ourselves, right? We are never allowed to be our own experts. Everybody knows best what's best for Black people except Black people. And that is the feeling that I often find myself feeling, right? We have to include people of color. We can never just say this is for Black people. All are welcome, but this is for Black people. When I feel like every other group gets to do that except Black people. We always have to add either Black or brown or people of color on the end of what we're saying instead of just saying Black people. Like, we are the highest risk in the world, right? We are hated because of our own skin color, not because of anything else in every part of the world. So it's different for us than it is for anybody else. So I need people to understand that piece is that, you know, for me, it's for Black people, right? All are welcome, like I said, but it's for Black people. Why I'm here.
Thank you for naming that explicitly.
Ashe, yes. Yeah. I wanted to ask you both as well, when we were talking about this presentation and this call, you both really mentioned ceremony and what grounds you in the work. And I was wondering if either of you could speak to what is it about farming that invokes ceremony for you both?
Well, for me, I had my own journey. You know, I come from a long line of poverty and was never really taught about where I come from or who I come from, right? Or the greatness of the shoulders that I stand on. I kind of had to seek it out. And it just started to come to me in spirit. And so me practicing ceremony and giving thanks to our ancestors for teaching and showing us how to love and care for the earth that gives us life, because without it, we'll all be dead, right? And, you know, it's unfortunate that we have to, it's commercialized. Everything, our electricity, our water, we have to pay for the things that the Most High gave us. He gave it all, he gave it to us for free, but we got to pay for it. And if you can't pay for it, then you can't have it. So it's important to recognize those who came before us and who spilled their blood cultivating this land for us, right? Never take it for granted. You take care of her and she will take care of you.
I love that.
And this is true because their food is free and it's everywhere if you know how to forage and if you seed save. And that's another thing I teach my students is seed saving. But ceremony to me is like, I'm an artist. And so when I cook or I make something, I make things out of art, things that I find off the ground or that, you know, out of gourds and things that were grown or fell off of a tree. But ceremony to me is also feeding my community and things because of my culture. We danced and we shared food and you know it's the land and it's in me and it's spiritual and it's a need and it's a dying need and that's what ceremony to me is, you know, like it's a spiritual, it's cultural, and it's based around land and food. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashe. Thank you to that. And I'll pass it back over to Minka. I was gonna, these are all strategies.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think that part of this discussion allows us to be rooted in both where, you know, there's a lot of processing that needs to happen. There's a lot of processing when it comes to a lot of the traumas that many of our folks have experienced around land and like in the past, and many that is ongoing. And these are very intersectional conversations. A lot of that means that the frameworks as well as the practices must demonstrate that intertwined nature. So that means we can't separate some of the issues or some of the stressors from the solution. And so I am grateful for this snapshot opportunity for us to just share a little bit of where we have come from, each of us on this panel. come from different families, different parts of the state, of the world, and have done what we could do to approach our own self-determination for ourselves and our families and our communities. And I'm grateful that we were able to share with you all who are in this panel, who are in this workshop, share some of who we are and where we come from, and hoping that this breeds some more opportunity for us to connect. If you want to go to the next slide, we just had, there was a discussion that Doria Robinson was having where she kind of named like some center points, where she says, center people and heal the land and practice known areas of the operation that can be self-sustaining, be the hub where imagination can take roots and grow new work. And if you're not familiar with Doria Robinson, she is the executive director of Urban Tilth. And so just kind of taking this as an example of how to ensure that our work is both able to be flexible and emergent, and also have rooted principles that are working, and that we have consistent reflection to know when it's not working, to know who we need to serve, and how we are showing up as our most authentic selves in it, to ensure that that we allow for, folks' voices to be heard, uplifted. And I'm grateful for Janelle and Victoria to kind of just share where they have come from in their lived experience. Yeah. And so, Ali, is there anything else you want to say to that?
No, that was really great. So I think my key takeaway from strategies are healing the people will heal the land and vice versa, which leads us to our call to action about building relationships, and Minka so beautifully named building relationships over task. So I'm going to drop a Google sheet in the chat that allows us to connect. And we would love to hear from you all. And I'm hoping, yep, Miss Victoria, thanks for dropping your contact information in there. If you also want to add it to this document so people can get in touch with you. I will add links to donate to the Butterfly Movement, Seed to Skillet, Feed Black Futures. But we would love to know where you're based. What do you need support with? And also, what can you offer? As Audre Lorde said, there's no liberation without community. So we really would like to offer this opportunity for us to connect and stay connected. These conferences are a really great opportunity to deepen our relationship with one another. So I will give us these last few minutes to pop our information into the chat. And then we can share, if we can share with you these slides, if you just share your information.
You can also we have some messaging features with our conference platform. So you can actually, you can send an email follow-up to everyone who registered for today's event with all of the links, forms, any other kind of pertinent information that you'd like to share.
Great. Thank you so much, Kath. So you have my contact information in the chat, and we'll leave you with this one of my favorite quotes that grounds us in this work as well. Revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. So if we work together, we can heal this land. And I dropped in Miss Victoria's GoFundMe, and as well as some other links. And it sounds like we have a lot of resources to share information too with the Sketch app. So thank you all for your time and energy here today on this Sunday. Often hard to be at things on a Sunday. So very grateful that y'all came through and showed up.
Thank you all so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you all at throughout the rest of the conference, perhaps even in person at some of our regional gatherings later this week. So big thank you to all of you for coming, sharing your thoughts, and have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, you too. Thank you for having me on your panel.